This video is sponsored by GXC, more on them later. For a series of games that I've never been all that good at, I really love Dark Souls, and Bloodborne, and Sekiro, and basically most of what From Software has made since 2009. Though they do like these mech suit games, and they made Steel Battalion Heavy Armor, and no? But when they buckle down and make third-person action games that brutally punish mistakes and complacency, they're on top form. There's a reason why everything was and still is being compared to Dark Souls, and why so many games have clearly been influenced by this franchise. It's kind of a big deal. Such a big deal, in fact, that I'm feeling a sense of gravitas from covering this topic, especially with Elden Ring coming very soon, which will likely shake up the order quite a lot. It's easy to feel the pressure, and suddenly you need some way of relaxing. It's very convenient then that this video is sponsored by GXC, an exciting new online platform for gamers and game creators alike, where you can play a host of really fun and exciting user-created video games that are probably easier than Dark Souls. The world rightly mourned when Adobe pulled the plug on their Flash player, but I was extra sad since it meant that it would be a lot harder to find online games to play instead of making videos for all you people. And yet in strides GXC with their solution to my problem, with hundreds of games available for free on their website, with that number growing every day. In order to access all of GXC's features, you do have to download Opera GX, which is the world's first web browser designed with gaming in mind, but hey, that's free as well. And I've been chilling out over there with their big list of survival games recently. I say chilling, some of these are quite hard, maybe not Dark Souls hard, but Super Raft Bow is this little gem where you have to shoot down any enemies you fancy destroying your little raft, which you can build up over time, but then the sharks come and smash it up and they're so good and annoying. Rev is cool and kind of hard to classify since you need to hunt for food as these cute pixel foxes, which is harder than it sounds, and actually has a lot of strategy involved with setting up ambushes with your fox pack. That pixel rabbit got trashed, oh my god. Neon Run is probably my favourite though, since it's a platformer where you have to switch between different colours so you can pass through these gates, but also try not to fall off. It's a lot harder than it looks. If this all sounds like fun to you, then make sure you click the link in this video's description to access GXC today, and make sure to download Opera GX at opera.com. Thank you again to GXC for sponsoring today's video. Alright then, let's split some hairs. I would have recorded my intro in my chair, but sadly, they're in my seat. What are you doing in my seat? The standard is so high with the Soulsborne games that it's actually quite hard to figure out what I put at the bottom of a ranking like this, since there's no one game that has shit the bed enough to make it a formality. For me, there is a small split, with two games ever so slightly falling off the bottom, and it's just a case of working out how I feel on the day about Dark Souls 2 and Demon Souls. Today we're putting Dark Souls 2 at the bottom, even though it's a perfectly serviceable example of the kind of game that From Software are so good at making, with some standout moments that are as good as anything in any other Soulsborne game. I think back to the time I've spent playing Dark Souls 2 and I'm reminded of so many great boss fights like Looking Glass Knight, who you fight outside in the middle of a storm and who can summon an enemy player to fight as well, and actually the first fight against the Pursuer has some uniqueness to it that goes beyond simply being a tutorial boss. Throw in some DLC that introduces a stacked collection of amazing fights, and it's an impressive lineup. You can feel that Dark Souls 2 has undergone a lot of refinement from the first game, and that the combat is just that bit tighter and less prone to glitchiness, a quality that complements these fights very nicely. On the other hand, I remember the shitty bosses too vividly to let Dark Souls 2 get away with it, which are actually indicative of a larger problem with the game's world design. It's not as interconnected as the first game, and whereas a few parts of Dark Souls 2 have clearly had work done on them, the world simply isn't as organic and as well designed as it could have been, which then links back to some of these horrible boss fights that end up in locations built around their terrible concepts, which just makes me more angry. I feel like From Software knew this too, because while the base game of Dark Souls 2 is a little bit shaky in places, the DLC is so much more stable and home to the best boss fights in the game. It also returns to the looping level design that was sorely absent before, and takes you through some honestly jaw-dropping environments. If the rest of the game had half the creativity as the DLC, then we would not be talking about Dark Souls 2 as possibly the worst game in the series. Again, hard to call it that when it does feel good to play, but just not as good as the rest. The standard's very high here, try to keep up. So yeah, we've got Demon Souls next because of what I said before, and I'm putting it above Dark Souls 2 almost entirely off the back of the recent remake on the PS5. The remake doesn't change too much from the original, which is both a blessing and a curse, but the main reason why I love Demon Souls is how this game manages its spectacles. The more I think about it, it's a style of a substance kind of game that struggles with a lot of goofy mechanics that seem to exist just to make life less bearable, like the whole losing half your health until you beat the next boss thing. Actually, this returned in Dark Souls 2, so maybe that's another reason to put that game on the bottom. Don't make the same mistake twice. The remake is interesting because it fixes a few issues like the camera and the awkward dodge roll, but doesn't go much further than that in favour of making the graphics look all new and shiny, and I really wish that just a bit more effort was put towards making it more of a fun game to play. It's a tricky balancing act because it's probably the least enjoyable Soulsborne game during normal gameplay, with a no-frills approach that hasn't aged well at all when stacked up against the games that came after, but so many of its boss fights are genuinely amazing. Tower Knight is a bona fide icon of Demon Souls that acts as a skill check and as, like, a scale check, I suppose? Something so imposing that it kinda changes how you see boss fights after this. After that, you've got Storm King, which is an onslaught of shooting wind from your sword at flying manta rays, and Dragon God, which is the definitive style of a substance experience with an awesome setup and imposing design laid over a pedestrian-paced puzzle boss fight. Demon Souls is clearly experimental and lots of fun in parts, but equally frustrating in others, and From Software made enough changes from this game for the next one that they felt the need to change its name. Don't expect a Demon Souls 2 anytime soon. It's a testament to the immense quality of the 4 remaining games that I've probably changed the order about a dozen times while writing this video. It's kind of impossible to rank them since they all set out to do different things and are exceptionally good at doing them, which just leaves me to split hairs based on personal preference and start this journey by revisiting the most recent game in the franchise. Kind of. No idea what we're going to call it when Elden Ring gets here, but the addition of Sekiro Shadows Die Twice has created the incredible combo word Soulsborne Kiro. I reckon you could fit ring in there at least. But yeah, Sekiro, a game so good that it was fairly comfortably my game of the year in 2019, as it demonstrated to the world that From Software can morph their ideas into a more malleable setting where the gothic architecture has been traded out for 17th century Japan, complete with samurai swords and grappling hooks. Sekiro is the most distant relative to the rest of the Soulsborne games, since combat is less about slowly whittling away HP, and more about upsetting an enemy's balance and landing that one killer blow, which, by the way, is unbelievably satisfying. There's a greater emphasis on stealth here too, which is given an extra helping of video gameness with the grappling hook, so you can move yourself around an area more easily, and it allows Sekiro to make use of more verticality in its environments. Really, this game has more new ideas than things in common with Dark Souls, but the difficulty is still very strong, and the loop of dying to a powerful enemy over and over again before gradually learning what you need to do is potentially even more satisfying with the new combat system. The learning curve is almost vertical at times, but every time you understand that little bit more, it feels like you're mastering a craft. From Software don't tend to give side game spin-offs, but I'd love to see them take a crack at a sequel to Sekiro. Maybe Shadows Die more than twice. If I was including other ports and versions of Dark Souls games, all of the PC ports would have collected at the bottom as some nasty sewage, because playing Dark Souls with keyboard controls is probably harder to learn than playing an actual keyboard. And at least this way you've got a trick to show off at parties. Frick. I'm saying this now because this was my first experience of Dark Souls 1, and yet despite being completely stomped by any halfway strong enemy, I fell in love with this game so quickly. That's a weird start to any relationship, but I suppose it got me acquainted with the harshness of this world in such an extreme way that nothing that Dark Souls could throw at me was ever likely to throw me off. Except maybe the Bed of Chaos, but I was invested by then, unfortunately. A lot of people will gladly put Dark Souls at the top of a list like this, and they're not wrong to feel that way, but if I agreed with them, I'd be saying that I prefer the original over some games that I feel have made drastic improvements. Dark Souls 1 is a little old now, and while the core components are solid, the way they're implemented does feel a little stilted and archaic in a lot of places. The second draft is good, it just needs more proofreading. Most of the time you won't even notice the issues, and if there's one thing that the first Dark Souls nails, it's the boss fights. There's some stinkers in there for sure, but the majority of the cast go a long way towards justifying Dark Souls' approach to combat, and the genuine skill checks that are designed to be as such are huge obstacles that rank among the best fights in the series. Ornstein and Smell are bullshit hard in a way that often feels impossible to overcome, but over the course of dozens, if not a couple hundred deaths, you edge ever closer until you're the most patient man who has ever lived and can finally conquer this insane challenge and feel like a god. This game and really this franchise are like a reset point for third-person action games, wresting the comfort away from the player and forcing them to fight for every inch of progress. And now, every other franchise is trying to either incorporate more difficult elements, or just straight up copy ideas from Dark Souls. The price of innovation is often steep. Yep, I'm the sort of person who prefers Dark Souls 3 over the original Dark Souls, but while you're lining up to throw rotten vegetables at me, let me just say that, again, these are two completely different games. Dark Souls 1 is From Software taking ideas from Demon Souls and improving them by so much that they became the basis for an entire franchise. Dark Souls 3, meanwhile, was made after Bloodborne, and so with the knowledge gained from that game and the fact that they need to end off this trilogy, Dark Souls 3 is a game made with culmination in mind. Everything's old and dying, and you'll spend more than a few moments exploring decrepit environments as you try very hard to not join all of the decomposing life around you. Despite the overwhelmingly shitty state of the world, Dark Souls 3 is really well refined, with significantly less jank than previous games, demonstrating that From Software have been taking more care with every game in this series and have set up the third one to be the culmination in more ways than one. Because of this, it's got a wonderful relationship with nostalgia. It's definitely got that victory lap vibe where FromSoft are super keen to revisit areas from Dark Souls 1, which may seem like pandering at best and a tired recycling of ideas at worst, but since the world is crumbling around you and significantly more corrupted, everything that feels familiar does so with a tinge of sadness to it. Like, nostalgia isn't being reminded of something from your past, it's feeling sad that that thing will never be like that again. And Orlando is back, but it's a shell of its former self and nothing like what you remember. And this is such a good way of designing a conclusion for your franchise. Plus, Dark Souls 3 is able to be this reflective journey while also showing off arguably the best lineup of boss fights in the series, to the point where it's probably quicker to talk about the ones that aren't so good. I never really liked the Ancient Wyvern for being too gimmicky and the Crystal Sage is annoying, but other than that, everything else is basically a knockout. Because of this game, we may never see a traditional Dark Souls game again, but this is the best way they could have seen this franchise off. We've done it all! Now it's dead. I want you to know that I'm being serious when I say that Bloodborne is pretty damn close to being the perfect Dark Souls game. For a time, the discourse surrounding this game wasn't all that positive back when people were complaining about the load times and how it's just a minute of a logo, and how there's no shields in the game, but it's all part of From Software's master plan to teach you how to be more aggressive and proactive in how you approach enemies. Dark Souls is so overwhelming at times that you naturally shrink into your shell and just try not to die for as long as possible. And Bloodborne certainly has the same level of imposing scale, but with the added impetus of the player to fight back hard. It's a completely different relationship that is more welcoming for new players and a welcome change of pace for experienced players that does an outstanding job of setting itself aside from the usual Dark Souls style. In Dark Souls, you parry with a shield. In Bloodborne, you use a gun. These are not the same game. And the upshot is that Bloodborne's approach to difficulty is a lot more welcoming and enjoyable. Yeah, sure, it'll kick the shit out of you a lot, and it does require you to pay attention to what a boss is doing so you don't end up rolling directly into an attack, but since you can gain lost health back by going on the offensive, there's an added incentive to get back in there and mitigate the damage. It encourages you really hard to not play defensively, which both makes Bloodborne a hell of a lot more fun to play, but also has the surprise bonus effect of making other Dark Souls games more enjoyable experiences. You're given a shield early on in Dark Souls and you shelter behind it, but if you play it like you do in Bloodborne, with lots of dodging and going on the offensive, then you're gonna have a wonderful time. It takes a special game to make previous games better, and every time I play it, I can't help but get caught up in how unbelievably good Bloodborne is. I don't know how we get another one, but please make it happen. So yeah, those are my picks for the best and worst Soulsborne games. Do you agree with me, or did I lose one too many brain cells in dying so many times? Let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more in the future. If you need something to watch right now, I've got a video here about the worst video game launches, and I also want to thank my top supporters on Patreon, including Sarah Malion, The Green Scorpion, and Scott Riker. Thank you for watching, and I really hope Elden Ring isn't shit.